Tiffany entered the Sterling Charity Gala wearing diamonds, gripping Michael's arm and laughing at the penny pinching nobody he had abandoned. She believed she had stolen a successful man and secured her place among New York's elite. But she had no idea the hotel belonged to Celine's family. The champagne came from Celine's private estate, and the limitless credit card funding her luxurious lifestyle had been authorized by Celine herself. Then the ballroom lights dimmed, a spotlight struck the grand staircase, and the woman Tiffany had mocked appeared beside one of the richest men in America. What happened next destroyed two arrogant lives in a single night. This story reminds us that true worth does not need to announce itself. Do you think Celine's revenge was justified? Like, comment, share, and subscribe to hear the full story. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful values and powerful life lessons.
She sauntered into the room. Tiffany Baines wore a diamond choker worth more than most earn in a decade. She gripped my husband's arm like a trophy. Clearly, she felt invincible. That limited edition Hermes bag and her status as the future Mrs. Vance had gone to her head. She locked eyes with me and let out a sharp, mocking laugh, dismissive, as if I were some penny-pinching nobody who had no business being in the room. She had no idea the luxury hotel we stood in was built by my father. The vintage champagne she was swilling came straight from my family's private estate. Even the credit card she was flashing to humiliate me had a limit I personally set. Watch this closely. That mistress spent her time flaunting wealth she did not earn. She was about to learn she was bragging to the woman who literally owned it all. Celine Vance sat at the kitchen island of the suburban home she shared with Michael. The granite had a chipped corner, a defect that got them a discount 5 years ago. She traced the rough edge, a sad smile on her lips. To any observer, Celine looked like a picture of suburban mediocrity. She was just a woman settled into a quiet, simple life, worlds away from any real power. Her days were defined by small habits: driving a 5-year-old Honda, clipping grocery coupons, freelance design work to help with the bills. She checked the clock. 7:30. Michael was late again. Supposed to be grinding away on the Anderson account. He had texted at 5. Since then, silence. Celine sighed and covered the cooling lasagna. She still held on to the desperate hope that she loved the man he used to be. Back in college, Michael Vance was a hungry scholarship student. Holes in his shoes, a fire in his belly. He was ambitious, yes, but also kind and grounded. He never cared about money, he never had any. That authenticity was why Celine had fallen for him. It was also why she kept her background hidden. To Michael, she was just Celine Miller, an orphan raised by an aunt, struggling to make ends meet. In reality, she was Celine Sterling, the sole heir to the massive Sterling global conglomerate. Her portfolio included shipping lines, luxury hotels, and half the prime real estate in Manhattan. Her father, Alexander Sterling, was a man of extreme wealth, a staple in the Forbes top 10. She was royalty in every sense, raised in penthouses and boardrooms, far from this kitchen island where she sat waiting for a husband who was drifting away. She had hidden her identity for years, wanting a love that was pure. She wanted someone who loved the real Celine, not the Sterling billions. But lately, the man she chose seemed to be slipping through her fingers. The front door groaned open with a heavy thud. Michael was home. The atmosphere didn't shift with its usual warmth. Instead, the air grew thick with a cloying, clashing scent. It was Baccarat Rouge 540. It was a heavy, expensive, an unmistakable fragrance, definitely not something Celine wore. "You are home," Celine said softly, wiping her flour-dusted hands. "I made lasagna." Michael didn't look her way. He tossed his keys onto the granite counter keys to the new BMW he had leased against her advice. "I am not hungry," Michael muttered. "We need to talk," Celine said, her voice steady. "You have been so distant lately. We need to be honest." "The credit card bill arrived today," Celine continued. "A charge at Cartier for $12,000. I have to assume that is a mistake." Michael froze. He turned to face her slowly, and his expression wasn't one of apology. His face twisted into a sneering mask of contempt, a look of cold, calculated malice she had never seen before. "It was not a mistake," Michael said. His voice dropped to a temperature that chilled the kitchen. "Then who is it for?" Celine asked, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "It is not for me. We do not have that kind of disposable income. It is for someone who actually appreciates the finer things." "Celine," Michael snapped, his eyes flashing with irritation. "Someone who does not make me feel guilty for wanting to live like a successful man. I am an architect at a top firm. Yet I come home to all of this suffocating, pathetic mediocrity. You act like we are destitute." Celine countered, her voice surprisingly steady. "Michael, please, just tell me who she is." Michael laughed, a harsh, dry, humorless sound that felt like a slap. "Her name is Tiffany, and unlike you, she knows how to navigate the social world I belong in. She is a consultant at the firm. She has genuine class. She has actual taste, something you would never understand." "Class," Celine raised an eyebrow. "Sleeping with a married man is your definition of class. We are done." "Michael," Michael said, pulling an envelope from his jacket and slamming it onto the counter. "I have outgrown you. I need a partner who shines, not a dull shadow counting pennies. I am filing for divorce. I have been paying the mortgage for 2 years while you played with your art projects. I expect you out by the end of the week." Celine looked down at the divorce papers. A strange, cold sensation washed over her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a clarifying, icy rage. He believed he was paying the mortgage. He was completely unaware that her freelance money had paid off the entire principal 3 years ago, just to lower the interest rates. "You are leaving me for a woman just because she likes to spend money you do not have?" Celine asked quietly. "I am leaving you because you are embarrassing." Michael spat, his face flushing. "Next week is the Sterling Charity Gala. It is the biggest networking event of the year. Tiffany got us invitations through her connections. I cannot possibly walk into a room like that with you in some cheap dress from a department store rack. I need to make partner, Celine. Tiffany is my ticket to the top. You are just an anchor dragging me into the dirt." The irony was suffocating. The Sterling Charity Gala was hosted by her own father, an event she had avoided for 5 years to keep her cover. "Get out," Celine whispered, her voice dangerously calm. Michael sneered, turning his back. "I am staying at Tiffany's penthouse tonight. Pack your bags. I want you out by Friday." He marched out, leaving Celine in the kitchen of a house she legally owned, rejected by a husband whose career she had secretly bankrolled. She picked up her phone. Her hand trembled. But not from sadness. It was the jagged adrenaline of a dragon finally waking up. She dialed a number she had not called in 3 years. The Sterling residence, who is speaking. The butler's crisp, professional British accent answered. "Alfred, it is Celine," she said, her voice shifting from the small-town wife to the commanding presence she was born to be. "Tell my father I am coming home, and tell him I am finally ready to wear the crown." 3 days had passed since Michael walked out. Celine had moved back into the massive Sterling estate, a mansion in the Hamptons that made the White House look like a guest cottage. The reunion with her father, Alexander, had been emotional, filled with the "I told you so"s that he politely swallowed for the sake of her tears. But those tears had dried up, replaced by a cold, hard focus. Now there was only the mission. "You want to attend the gala?" Alexander Sterling asked, sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking at Celine with curiosity. He was a formidable man, 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that could cut through glass. "Not just attend." "Dad," Celine said, adjusting the silk cuffs of her tailored blouse. "I want to host, announce it officially. It is time Celine Sterling returned from the dead." Alexander smiled a wolfish, proud expression. "That is my girl. But if you are re-entering society, you need the wardrobe to match. I am already on it." An hour later, Celine walked into Maison du Ciel, the most exclusive boutique in the city. This was the kind of place requiring a formal appointment just to glance at the windows. She was dressed simply: jeans and a white tee, large sunglasses hiding her face. She wanted to browse before her private fitting later that afternoon. She was studying a midnight blue velvet gown when a shrill, grating voice sliced through the air. "Oh, look, Michael. Ideally, I want something in a vibrant crimson to match the new Porsche." Celine froze. She peered through silk scarves to see them. Michael stood there, looking miserable in a suit that was too tight. Hanging off his arm was a woman dipped in liquid gold and draped in expensive diamonds. It was Tiffany Baines, stunning in a plastic, manufactured way platinum extensions, overfilled lips, wearing a bodycon dress that left nothing to the imagination. She snapped her fingers at a sales assistant. "You, bring me the platinum collection. Get my fiancé a glass of water. Sparkling, not tap," she commanded with a sneer. Michael looked up, his eyes widened. He spotted Celine near the racks. For a second, he looked genuinely panicked. Then, seeing her simple jeans and tee, his arrogance returned. He leaned in, whispering to Tiffany. Tiffany whipped her head around, scanning Celine with pure, unadulterated disgust. They started walking over. "Well, well," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Michael told me his ex-wife was plain, but he never said she was homeless." Tiffany mocked. Celine stood her ground, posture regal. "Hello, Michael." "Tiffany, I assume. That is Ms. Baines to you." Tiffany scoffed, clearly offended. She lifted her hand, flashing a gaudy, oversized yellow diamond. "Michael just bought this for me. It cost more than that sad little car you drive." Tiffany bragged. "What are you doing here? The charity bin is 3 blocks away." "I am shopping," Celine said, perfectly calm, just like you. Tiffany let out a loud, cackling sound that drew the sharp attention of store security. "Shopping here, honey. One scarf is $5,000. Do you have $5,000 without Michael S. Paycheck?" Michael stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. "Celine, do not embarrass yourself. Just leave," Michael commanded. "You do not belong here. This is not some discount store like Target. I have every right to be here." Celine said, her gaze steady. "No, you absolutely do not." Tiffany snapped. She grabbed a shimmering silver gown. "See this, a Vortor original. $20,000. I am buying it for the Sterling Gala. I bet you have never even smelled a dress like this." Tiffany sneered. Tiffany turned to the sales associate, a young woman named Sarah, who looked completely terrified. "Excuse me, tell this person to leave. She is disturbing the clientele. She clearly cannot afford anything in this shop." Sarah looked at Celine, then back to Tiffany, her expression becoming serious and unreadable. "Listen, everyone is welcome to browse, but I personally spend $50,000 a month in this district." Tiffany shrieked. Her voice echoed off the walls, causing other shoppers to gasp. "If you do not kick this peasant out, I will call the owner. I know people. My fiancé is a top-tier architect." Michael looked nervous, shifting his weight. "Tiffany, babe, maybe we should ignore her. No, I want her out now." Tiffany stepped right into Celine's space. Her presence was overwhelming. The smell of her cheap, cloying perfume was suffocating. "Listen, you little mouse. You already lost. Michael is mine. The money is mine. The lifestyle is mine. You are nothing, a pathetic nobody who uses coupons for cat food. Get out before I have security drag you out." Celine felt the sharp anger bubbling, but forced it down. "Not the right time. Not quite yet. Enjoy the dress, Tiffany," Celine said, her voice dropping to a dangerously low, calm tone. "It looks a bit tight on you." Celine turned and walked out, her head held high, her posture perfect. Behind her, she heard Tiffany screeching at the staff. "Did she just say I am fat? Michael, do something about this." Celine stepped onto the sidewalk. Fresh air hit her face. She pulled her phone from her purse. She dialed her father's assistant. "Hello, Miss Sterling," the assistant answered warmly. "Hi, Jessica," Celine said, glancing back through the boutique window where Tiffany was aggressively waving a credit card at the staff. "I need a favor regarding the boutique Maison du Ciel. Who owns the building lease?" There was the sound of rapid typing. "That would be Sterling Commercial Properties, ma'am." Celine smiled a cold, terrifying smile that did not reach her eyes. "Excellent. Call the manager immediately. Tell them I want the entire platinum collection reserved for a private viewing at the estate tomorrow. And specifically, mark the silver Vator gown as unavailable." "Consider it done," the assistant replied. Celine hung up. Tiffany thought she had won. She had no idea Celine was about to buy the entire battlefield. The morning sun over the Hamptons did not just shine. It caressed the perfectly manicured lawns of the Sterling estate. Inside the master suite, Celine stood before a mirror, but she was not looking at her reflection. She was looking at a stranger, someone she had not recognized in a long time. For 5 years, she had worn the mask of a suburban housewife. She had worn cheap cotton, kept her nails short, and worried about electric bills. She had dimmed her light just to make Michael feel brighter. Standing there now, surrounded by the opulence she was born into, she felt a phantom pain, the deep ache of the love she had finally amputated 3 days ago. "The stylist is ready, Miss Sterling," Alfred the butler announced from the doorway. His voice was soft, carrying a heavy note of paternal sadness. He had watched her grow up, watched her run away for a false love, and watched her return broken. "Send them in, Alfred," Celine said, finally turning away from the window with firm resolve. "And Alfred, have security do a final sweep of the guest list for the gala tonight. I want to make sure Michael Vance and Tiffany Baines are seated at table 19. Alfred raised a refined, thin eyebrow. "Table 19, madam, is right by the kitchen doors. That seems rather drafty." "It is perfect," Celine said, her eyes turning cold and distant. Meanwhile, 40 miles away, the atmosphere was far less serene. Tiffany Baines stormed into Maison du Ciel like a hurricane in 6-inch Louboutins. She was vibrating with adrenaline. Today was the day she would finally secure the silver vautour gown. She had spent the entire night wide awake, obsessively fantasizing about the moment she would walk into the Sterling Gala. She imagined photographers snapping her picture, the whispers of envy, and most importantly, the validation that she had finally arrived. Michael trailed behind her, looking significantly paler than usual. He checked his banking app again. The balance was dangerously low. His entire severance package was gone, spent on Tiffany's lease, the luxury car, and the ring. He was banking everything on this gala. If he could land a contract with Alexander Sterling, the money would not matter. But right now, the numbers were screaming at him. "I am here," Tiffany announced to the boutique, flinging her arms wide. "Bring me the dress." The manager, a tall, severe French woman named Madame Clotilde, stepped out from the back. She did not smile. She did not offer champagne or even a greeting. She stood with hands clasped tightly in front of her black blazer, her expression entirely unreadable. "Miss Baines," Clotilde said, her accent thick and icy. "Mr. Vance, we are in a hurry," Tiffany snapped, placing her gold clutch on the glass counter. "Wrap up the silver vautour, and I will take the matching clutch. Michael, get the card out." Michael reached for his wallet, his hand trembling slightly. "Right, the silver one. I am afraid that is impossible," Madame Clotilde said smoothly. Tiffany froze. She blinked, her fake lashes fluttering like trapped moths. "Excuse me, the vautour gown is no longer available," Clotilde stated firmly. "It has been acquired by a private collector." "Bought," Tiffany's voice hit a sharp, ugly octave. "I told that girl I was taking it. You cannot just sell it to someone else. Don, you know who my fiancé is?" Clotilde didn't blink, her gaze shifting to Michael with cold disdain. "She told them the client didn't just reserve it. They bought the entire collection." Michael choked, his face draining of color. "That is hundreds of thousands of dollars." Clotilde nodded. "The client demanded total exclusivity. No pieces from the platinum line hit the public until after the gala." Tiffany's face flushed a mottled, furious red. A vein pulsed in her forehead. "This is discrimination. Who bought it? Is it some washed-up celebrity?" "I am not at liberty to say," Clotilde replied, gesturing for security. "But she did leave a message for you. Miss Baines." Tiffany stood frozen, her chest heaving with raw, jagged rage. "A message." Clotilde pulled a cream card from the counter and read it, her voice flat. "Tell Miss Baines that true class cannot be bought off a rack. It is either inherited or earned." "She has done neither." Tiffany let out a piercing, primal scream that cut through the silence. She swept her arm across the counter, shattering expensive perfume bottles everywhere. Jasmine and amber flooded the air. Michael grabbed her arm in a panic. "Stop it, you are making a scene." "I do not care," Tiffany shrieked. Pulling away, "They humiliated me. People are laughing at me. Fix this, Michael." Clotilde's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "You have 5 seconds to leave before I have you arrested." And with our owner, the resulting lawsuit will bury you." Michael dragged a sobbing, cursing Tiffany out to the scorching pavement. He felt sick. He looked at the woman he had destroyed his marriage for, mascara streaming, screaming at a doorman. For 1 second, he wondered about Celine. Celine, who never raised her voice. Celine, who made him tea. He shook it off. Celine is the past. Tiffany is the future. We just need to get through tonight. It is okay. Baby, Michael lied, his heart elsewhere. We will find something better. When we meet Alexander Sterling, this will be forgotten. They had no clue Alexander was in his library, laughing while Celine recounted the dress debacle. "You are vicious, my dear," Alexander said, sipping scotch. "I learned from the best, Dad," Celine replied, staring at the fire. But the dress was the appetizer. The gala was an institution. Held in the grand ballroom of the Sterling Imperial Hotel, titans of industry and old money gathered here to celebrate themselves. The room was a masterpiece. 10,000 white orchids hung from the ceiling, while massive chandeliers dripped light like liquid diamonds. The floor was polished marble, and the air smelled of wealth and heavy perfume. By 7:45, the guests arrived. Rolls-Royces and Bentleys lined the velvet ropes. Paparazzi flashes went off like strobes. Michael and Tiffany stepped out of an old, yellowed limousine. Michael had paid for a driver to open the door, but the car looked tired, and the driver looked bored. Tiffany had settled for a bright crimson dress. It was loud, too loud. Sequins caught the light aggressively, and the slit went dangerously high. In a cheap club, she might have passed, but here, amidst silk and chiffon, she looked like a neon sign in a museum. "Smile, Michael," Tiffany hissed, waving at photographers who were aiming their lenses at a senator behind them. "We need to be seen." Michael adjusted a tie that felt like a noose. "I am smiling. Please, just keep your voice down. Discretion is for poor people," Tiffany scoffed. She dragged him onto the red carpet and into the ballroom. The scale of the wealth hit Michael like a blow. He saw a tech giant chatting with a duchess. He saw his old boss, the man who denied his raise, begging for a moment with a venture capitalist. "Let us find our table," Michael said, his eyes scanning for their placard. "I requested a spot right by the Sterling family." He flagged down a steward. "Vance, table for two." The steward checked his list, his face neutral. He looked up with a tight smile. "Ah, Mr. Vance, you are at table 19. 19, that is a prime number," Tiffany said, sounding pleased. "Must be front row." The steward pointed toward the dim, crowded back of the room. "It is near the service entrance, sir, through the pillars." Michael felt the heat of embarrassment rise in his neck as they passed the elite. They walked past corporate tables, each one more luxurious than the last. They kept walking until they reached the swinging doors, where waiters rushed with trays. Table 19 was wobbly and hidden by a drooping potted fern. "This is a joke," Tiffany spat, kicking the chair. "We are sitting with the help." "Michael, go tell them this is a mistake. Tell them you are a VIP. I cannot make a scene." Michael hissed, gripping her wrist. "Look around. The governor is right there. We are done if you scream. Sit down. We will find Alexander later." Tiffany downed a glass of warm champagne and signaled for another. Michael scanned the room, desperate for any shred of power. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. Conversation died. A heavy, golden hush fell over the room. The orchestra swelled into a dramatic, sweeping crescendo. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase. The master of ceremonies stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, the chairman of Sterling Global, Mr. Alexander Sterling." Polite, respectful applause rippled through the hall like a wave. Alexander appeared, regal in a tailored tuxedo. He waved, descending a few steps, as the MC continued, making her return to public life after 5 years abroad, the sole heir to the Sterling Empire. His daughter, Michael frowned. "Confused daughter. I did not know he had one. I thought he was estranged." Michael whispered, "Who cares?" Tiffany rolled her eyes, probably some spoiled brat. Then she stepped into the light. The breath left Michael's lungs. The woman at the top of the stairs was a vision. She was wearing the silver couture gown. It looked like liquid starlight draped over a statue. Her dark hair cascaded down her back in waves. She wore a sapphire necklace that glittered with impossible intensity. She moved with a grace that seemed to command the very air in the room. She looked like a queen surveying her subjects. As she descended on her father's arm, Michael squinted, his brain struggling to process the sight. The walk, the proud tilt of her chin, it was familiar. That dress, Tiffany gasped, clutching the cloth. That is my dress. She is the one who bought it. Tiffany hissed, her face draining of color. Keep it down, Michael whispered, leaning in. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Tiffany, just shut up. The woman reached the bottom of the stairs. The spotlight widened, catching her face for the first time. She scanned the crowd, eyes sharp and guarded. She did not smile. She was in absolute control. The room spun. Michael gripped the table edge, his knuckles turning white. It was impossible. This was not the woman he had kicked out 3 days ago. The woman he called mediocre for clipping grocery coupons. Celine, no, he thought, his mind fighting the reality unfolding before him. Michael whispered the name like a dying breath. No, no, what is it? Tiffany snapped, watching him with growing suspicion. You know her. Michael turned to her, his eyes wide with a terror she could not grasp. Tiffany, that is Celine. Tiffany squinted at the staircase, then let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Your ex, the frumpy one. Don't be stupid. Michael, that woman is dripping in millions. Your ex wears sweaters from a discount bin. That is a sterling. I am telling you. Michael stammered, his voice trembling. That is my wife. At that moment, as if she could hear them across the ballroom, Celine turned her gaze toward the back of the room, toward the kitchen doors. She locked eyes with Michael. Even from 50 feet away, he saw it, not love, not sadness, absolute, terrifying recognition. She slowly raised her champagne flute, a toast, a challenge, a silent goodbye. Then she turned away, took her father's arm, and vanished into the crowd of billionaires who parted for her like the sea. Michael sank into his chair, the truth hitting him like a tidal wave. He had not just left his wife. He had abandoned the princess of the very kingdom he was desperate to enter, and he had brought the court jester along for the ride. The ballroom was a swirling galaxy of extreme wealth, where laughter sounded like gold coins. But at table 19, the air felt stagnant and heavy. Michael could not look away. She was circulating near the orchestra, surrounded by admirers. He watched as the CEO of a major bank, a man Michael had chased for 3 years, bent down to kiss her hand with genuine reverence. He heard Celine laugh. It was a sparkling, vibrant sound he had never heard in their years together. Not the polite chuckle she gave watching movies on their worn-out sofa, but the booming confidence of a woman who owned the room. Stop staring, Tiffany hissed, stabbing her fork into dry chicken. It is a trick. It has to be. It is not a trick, Tiffany, Michael murmured, wiping sweat from his lip. His mind was racing, rewriting their entire marriage. He remembered complaining about mortgage rates, only for the bank to call the next day claiming a clerical error had dropped them to nearly zero. He recalled how he always landed last-minute reservations at fully booked restaurants whenever Celine made the call. He remembered her beaten-up Honda. It was not because she could not afford better. She simply did not care about status symbols. She is playing a role, Tiffany insisted, her voice rising in panic. The alcohol was making her sloppy. She is probably a hired actress. Or maybe she is sleeping with the old man. That is it. She is Alexander Sterling's sugar baby. Disgusting, Tiffany muttered. Tiffany, keep your voice down, Michael begged, looking around nervously. You do not understand. If that is really Celine Sterling, my career is finished. I need a contract with her father tonight. If she tells him what? Tiffany snapped. That you upgraded. That you left a boring housewife for a woman with actual style. Any man would understand that. Tiffany said, her ego desperate for validation. She smoothed her red dress. I am going to the bathroom. And on the way back, I am walking right past her. I want to see the panic in her eyes when she realizes we are not afraid. Tiffany, don't. But she was already moving, her hips swaying as she cut through the crowd like a blade. Michael sat alone at the wobbly table, feeling small and completely exposed. He looked at the portfolio under his chair, filled with his designs. They had felt proud this morning. Now they looked like pathetic drawings made with cheap crayons. Across the room, Celine saw the flash of red sequins approaching. She did not flinch. She was talking with Mr. Henderson, the head of the city zoning board, and the proposal for the waterfront park. Celine asked softly. Approved, Miss Sterling. Henderson beamed. Anything for the community. Excellent. Celine's eyes shifted. She saw Tiffany approaching. Tiffany was not heading to the restroom. She was making a beeline for Celine. The crowd sensed the friction and parted. Sensing a looming disaster, Tiffany stopped 3 feet away. Up close, the difference was brutal. Tiffany's makeup was caked and cracking under the lights. Celine's skin was flawless porcelain. Tiffany's dress looked like a cheap costume. Celine's gown was pure art. So, Tiffany said, loud enough to kill the nearby conversations, "You clean up nice. Who paid for the rental?" The elite circle fell silent, shocked by the breach of etiquette. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. Looking miserable, Celine slowly turned. She did not look angry. She looked bored. "Hello, Tiffany," Celine said coolly. "I see you found the buffet. I hope the chicken at the back of the room was to your liking." Tiffany flushed a deep, ugly red. "Don't talk down to me. You think because you put on borrowed diamonds, you are better than me. We all know who you are. Michael's charity case ex-wife." She looked around, seeking validation for her cruelty. "She used to clip coupons. She counts pennies," Tiffany sneered. "This is all a sham." The room did not laugh. They stared at Tiffany with pity and cold disdain. This world, talking about money so crudely, was a social sin. "Tiffany," Celine said, stepping forward with elegant menace. She lowered her voice so only those nearby could hear. "You are embarrassing yourself. And more importantly, you are embarrassing Michael. If you want to help his career, turn around, head to table 19, and sit in total silence until the valet brings your car. You cannot tell me what to do." Tiffany shrieked, her face turning crimson. "I am the future, Mrs. Vance." She spat. "The future, Mrs. Vance," Celine repeated, her voice dripping with amusement. "Yes, you are welcome to the title. I certainly do not need it anymore." Celine gestured toward a security guard nearby. He stepped forward instantly, hand on his earpiece, scanning the room. "Is there a problem, Miss Sterling?" The guard asked. "No problem at all." "James," Celine said with a warm smile. "This guest was just looking for the exit." She was looking for the exit. "Please keep a close eye on her. We really do not want her to trip on her way out." Tiffany opened her mouth, but the wall of social pressure slammed into her like a force. Dozens of the city's most powerful people stared at her like she was a cockroach on a cake. She turned and stomped away, tears of rage in her eyes. She rushed back to Michael, who was hiding behind his glass. "We are leaving now," Tiffany hissed, grabbing her purse. "We cannot leave." Michael whispered, his face paper white. "Look," he pointed to the stage. Alexander Sterling had returned to the mic, but he was not alone. He was motioning for someone to join him. "I would like to invite the lead architect of our partner firm to the stage," Alexander announced. "Mr. Michael Vance. Is he here?" Michael froze, his heart stopped. "He wants me," Michael stammered. Eyes wide, a surge of irrational, blinding hope took hold. "Maybe he does not know about the drama. Maybe he just likes my work." Celine kept it professional. She did not say a word. "Go." Tiffany pushed him hard. "Go up there. Show her who is the boss." Michael stood up slowly. He buttoned his jacket, hands shaking. He marched across the ballroom. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Adrenaline burned away the terror. "Stay focused," he told himself. "You are a genius architect. Sterling cares about profit, not his daughter's messy love life." He reached the stage legs feeling like lead. Alexander Sterling watched him from the podium. The older man wasn't smiling. His eyes were dark tunnels of pure judgment. Michael reached the podium. The microphone hummed. He scanned the room feeling exposed. Tiffany stood on a chair at the back, cheering silently. Then he saw her. Celine, front row center. She crossed her legs, silver gown shimmering. She locked eyes with him. She smiled a terrifying, wolfish grin that chilled him. "Mr. Vance," Alexander Sterling said, his voice booming across the grand hall. "Thank you for joining us." "It is an honor, sir," Michael stammered. his voice cracking. "I have my portfolio right here." "That will not be necessary." Alexander snapped, his tone cold and final. "We are not here to discuss your drawings. Michael, we are here to talk about your liabilities." Total silence fell over the ballroom. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Michael gripped the podium, the spotlight burning his neck. "Liabilities," he whispered. "I do not understand. My firm is solvent. We have excellent projections." Alexander stepped aside. To Michael's horror, Celine rose from the front row and walked toward the stage. She ignored her father. She took the microphone right out of Michael's hand. "Sterling Global values integrity above all else," Celine said, her voice smooth and chillingly amplified. "We build foundations that last. We do not build on sand, Mr. Vance. Your foundation is a lie." "Celine, please," Michael whispered. Desperate. "Do not do this." She ignored him completely. She pressed a remote. A massive screen dropped behind them. "Vance thinks he is a self-made man," Celine told the crowd, her eyes glacial. "He thinks his lifestyle and his mistress are products of his genius." She clicked the remote. The screen flared. A bank statement appeared. "Vance household for 5 years," she narrated. "I funneled money into this account under the guise of freelance work. It came from my private trust. It paid off our mortgage." "Michael, you thought you were paying the bills." "No, you were paying into a secret savings account I created for you. A savings account you emptied 3 days ago to buy a yellow diamond ring." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Michael felt his knees buckle. He had drained it, thinking it was his own equity. Click. The screen changed again. A document from a luxury car dealership. "The BMW you leased," Celine continued. "You never qualified for that loan. Michael, your debt ratio was too high. The dealership called me. I signed as guarantor through a shell corporation. I am the only reason you drive that car." Celine turned toward table 19. Tiffany stood frozen. The credit card. Click. A massive image of a black card appeared. The one Michael gave to Tiffany. The one she flaunted earlier. "This is a supplementary card for a Sterling Prime account holder," Celine said. "Michael, you never wondered why you had a $50,000 limit despite earning pennies. I paid the balance every single month." Celine turned back to him, her eyes hard as glass. "You did not buy that ring for your mistress." "I did. You did not take her to dinner." "I did. Every expensive breath you took for 5 years was authorized by me because I loved you. I wanted you to feel like a king." She leaned into the microphone, her voice dropping to a lethal, echoing whisper. "But you did not want a queen. Michael, you wanted a fan. When you brought that woman," she pointed a manicured finger at Tiffany, "to the boutique my family owns to buy a dress with my money, you made your final mistake." Michael trembled. The crowd stared at him not with respect but with disgust. They saw a fraud, a parasite. "Now," Celine said, her voice bright and hollow, "about your contract." She glanced at her father. Alexander nodded. "Sterling Global is acquiring Vance Architecture as of this morning," Celine announced. "We bought the stake from your partners, who were eager to dump a liability." Michael grabbed the podium for balance. You are my boss." "No," Celine smiled thinly. "I am not your boss, Michael, because you are fired." She looked toward the back of the room. Tiffany Baines, the spotlight swung, pinning Tiffany against the kitchen doors like a deer in headlights. "That ring," Celine said, voice clear. "It was bought with funds restricted to a spouse. You are not his spouse. That is theft." Celine checked her watch. "My lawyers froze the assets 10 minutes ago. The credit card is dead. The BMW valet has orders to keep the keys. I have revoked all privileges." Celine looked at them, the broken man on stage, and the woman trapped in the light. "You are welcome to leave, but you will have to walk. Tiffany, you might want to run. The ring is stolen property. The police are waiting in the lobby for you." Celine set the microphone down. A dull thud signaled the end of Michael Vance's life. She turned to her father. "Shall we dance, Dad? We shall." Alexander beamed as the orchestra began a waltz. Security guards escorted a weeping Michael away from the guests. At the back, Tiffany clawed at the ring on her swollen finger as 2 officers moved in. Michael looked back one last time. He saw Celine spinning in her father's arms, the silver dress flaring like a supernova. She did not look back. She did not look sad. She looked entirely, perfectly free. He stumbled out into the cold night, pockets empty, future gone, the arrogance still ringing in his ears. The heavy oak doors of the hotel slammed shut behind them with the finality of a prison cell. The music faded, replaced by the harsh, wet noise of the city. It was raining a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked his tuxedo. "Do something!" Tiffany shrieked, her voice raspy. Mascara streaked her cheeks. "Call a car. Call a lawyer. You said you were the architect of the future. Fix this." Michael stared at his phone. Screen was shattered. No notifications, no job offers. Just a bank alert account overdrawn. "I cannot," he whispered, his voice hollow. "She froze everything, Tiffany. The cards, the accounts all gone. The ring." Tiffany tugged at the yellow diamond. Her knuckle was swollen from the night's indulgence. "It is stuck. Help me get it off." It was too late. Two officers stepped from the shadows by the valet stand. They looked weary, like men who had seen this exact tragedy 1,000 times before. One officer approached, his badge glinting in the street lamp. "Miss Baines," he said, his voice flat, "we are here regarding a report of grand larceny. The claimant, Celine Sterling, has provided authenticated proof that you never had the right to own that jewelry." "It is a gift," Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking as she backed away. "My fiancé gave it to me." The officer remained calm, entirely unmoved by her outburst. A fiancé who used a corporate card he was never authorized to use for personal gifts. He corrected, his tone clinical. "You have two options, Tiffany. Hand it over now, or we remove it at the station." "Your choice." Michael watched, paralyzed, as Tiffany, the woman who sneered at Celine for wearing department store rags, frantically used her own teeth to pry the ring off. She finally tore the ring from her finger and hurled it into the plastic evidence bag. A sob of pure, materialistic grief echoing in the quiet street. "You are absolutely pathetic." Tiffany spat, turning her venom toward Michael. "I am going to my mother's house. Do not call me. Do not text me. If I ever see your face again, I will scream." She signaled for a yellow cab, not a luxury car, not an Uber, but a standard, peeling city taxi. The yellow car vanished into the dark. Rainy night, leaving Michael alone on the cold curb. The valet hovered nearby, keys dangling from his fingers. "Sir, the BMW." Michael opened his mouth to reclaim his status, to ask for the keys, but then the cold memory of Celine's voice returned, guarantor revoked. "Keep it," Michael croaked, his spirit finally collapsing. He began to walk. He walked for 40 blocks, his Italian loafers shredding against the pavement, the freezing rain soaking through and ruining his silk lapels until he looked like nothing more than a ghost. He walked until he reached the damp apartment he had rented for Tiffany, the one he knew he could no longer afford. When the next morning arrived, the sun brought no warmth or comfort to Michael Vance. He arrived at his architecture firm at exactly 9 o'clock, his heart pounding, clinging to the delusional hope that Celine had been bluffing. Maybe he still had a job. Maybe he could salvage his pride and reputation before anyone found out he was penniless. He swiped his key card, but the little light on the reader blinked a sharp, unforgiving red. A security guard, a man Michael had never bothered to learn the name of during his years of arrogance, finally opened the door. He held a small, pathetic cardboard box. "Mr. Vance," the guard said, refusing to make eye contact, "these are your personal effects. You are not permitted on the premises any longer. I need to speak to the partners," Michael demanded, though his voice was thin and lacked real authority. "I built this firm. The firm is under new management now," the guard replied flatly, handing him the box. It felt incredibly light. Inside, there was a framed photo of him and Tiffany, a cheap plastic stapler, and a coffee mug that simply said "Boss." "Sterling Global is currently doing a full audit of everything," he added. "They suggested you get a lawyer," the guard mentioned, though he sounded skeptical. "Well, good luck finding one who will actually go against the Sterlings." Michael took the box and trudged away. He sat on a cold park bench across the street, watching the building he once walked into with such unearned confidence. Weeks bled into months. The divorce process was swift and brutal. Michael had no money to pay for a high-powered attorney, so he was assigned a court-appointed representative who looked bored. distracted and entirely uninterested in his fate. Celine did not even bother to show up to the courthouse. She simply sent a team of 5 sharp lawyers in crisp gray suits who laid out the legal paperwork with surgical, cold precision. Michael walked away with nothing. No alimony, no assets, no status, just the mountain of crushing debt he had accrued on his own credit cards, while trying to desperately maintain the hollow facade of a billionaire lifestyle. He finally moved into a cramped, windowless basement studio apartment in Queens. He applied to dozens of other firms, but the name Sterling had become a permanent gatekeeper. No one wanted to hire the man who had publicly humiliated the most powerful woman in the industry. He was professionally radioactive. 6 months later, Michael was standing behind the counter at a local hardware store. It was honest work, but it was physically grueling. His hands, once used for drafting delicate blueprints, were now rough, calloused, and stained from hauling heavy bags of cement for minimum wage. It was finally lunchtime. He sat on a plastic milk crate in the back alley, eating a cold, dry sandwich. A discarded newspaper lay on the dirty ground next to his feet. A gust of wind blew the pages open, and Michael froze. Right there on the cover of Business and Life magazine was Celine. She was not wearing a ball gown. She was wearing a hard hat and a professional white blazer, standing in front of a massive, gleaming skyscraper, the new sustainable housing project that Vance Architecture had failed to design, but which Sterling Global had successfully brought to life. The bold headline read, "The Queen of Acquisitions." Below it, the article detailed how Celine Sterling had redefined the entire city skyline and found happiness on her own terms. She looked radiant, powerful, and completely indifferent to the past. Next to her in the photo stood a man with kind eyes and a rugged look. The caption identified him as Julian Thorne, a renowned landscape architect who was now her partner in business and in life. Michael stared at the photo, his chest tightening. He remembered the coupon clipping. He remembered the quiet, simple nights they had once shared. He remembered the woman who had loved him unconditionally when he was a nobody. He realized in that agonizing moment that he had not just lost a fortune or a career. He had been holding a rare, beautiful diamond in his hands. But he had mistaken it for worthless glass and thrown it away just to pick up a piece of cheap, shining glitter that washed away in the first rain. Michael closed the newspaper, folding it carefully before setting it aside. He finished his sandwich in silence. "Vance," the manager yelled from inside the store, his voice booming. "A customer needs help with the plumbing aisle." "Coming," Michael replied automatically. He stood up, dusted off his apron, and walked back into the reality of the mediocrity he had once feared, knowing now that it was exactly what he deserved. And that, in short, is the story of Michael and Tiffany. They chased the glittering illusion of wealth so hard that they ran right past the reality of it. Michael spent 5 wasted years looking for a better, flashier life, never realizing that the woman he once saw cutting coupons at his kitchen table could have bought and sold his entire fake world 10 times over. He wanted a partner who would shine like gold, but he forgot that gold is ultimately cold, heavy and lifeless. Celine, on the other hand, proved that true class is not about how much you spend or how loud you talk. It is about knowing your own worth and never letting anyone discount you. What do you think about this? Did Celine take her revenge too far? Or was it exactly what Michael and Tiffany deserved for their betrayal? If you were in Celine's position, would you have revealed your true identity much sooner? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments section below. I read every single one of your comments. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It helps the channel grow. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story about cheaters getting exactly what is coming to them. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.